The restaurant was known for its elegance. Soft golden lights shimmered across polished marble floors. Every table was perfectly arranged, every glass sparkling like crystal under the chandelier. It was the kind of place where people came to feel important. And tonight it was full. At the far corner stood a young waitress named Alina. She moved quickly yet gracefully, balancing trays, remembering orders, smiling even when no one smiled back. It wasn't just a job for her. It was survival. Her shift had already been long, 12 hours on her feet, barely a moment to breathe. But she kept going, because she had no other choice. The door opened. 3 men walked in. Their presence changed the atmosphere instantly. Expensive suits, luxury watches, confidence that bordered on arrogance. They didn't wait to be seated. They walked straight to the center table, as if the place belonged to them. And in their minds, it probably did. One of them snapped his fingers. "Hey, you!" No name, no respect, just a command. Alina walked over calmly. Her smile didn't fade. "Good evening, sir. Welcome." The men exchanged smirks. One leaned back in his chair. "We'll see if it's a good evening." They ordered without looking at her. Expensive dishes, imported drinks, the kind of order meant to impress or intimidate. Alina noted everything carefully. Not a single mistake, not a single complaint. She had dealt with people like this before, but tonight felt different. There was something in their tone, something sharper, colder. As she walked away, one of them whispered loudly enough for her to hear, "Let's see how long she keeps that fake smile." She heard it, but she didn't react. She couldn't afford to. Minutes later, she returned with their drinks, carefully placing each glass. Perfect posture, perfect service. One of the men picked up his glass, then suddenly frowned. "What is this?" Alina remained calm. "Your drink, sir." He slammed it back on the table. "This isn't what I asked for." It was exactly what he asked for, but that didn't matter. "I'm sorry, sir. I can replace it immediately." Another man chuckled. Look at her, already apologizing. They weren't upset. They were entertained. Alina took the glass back without arguing, because she knew arguing would only make things worse. From across the room, a man watched quietly. He sat alone. Simple clothes. No attention drawn to him. He wasn't just any customer, but no one knew that. Meanwhile, the 3 men grew louder, more demanding, more disrespectful. "Hey, waitress." Faster. "Are you deaf?" Each word sharper than the last. Each tone more humiliating. Other customers began to notice. Some looked uncomfortable. Others simply looked away. No one intervened. No one ever does. Alina returned with the corrected drink, placed it gently in front of the man. He took a sip, paused, then smirked. Still wrong. The table burst into laughter. But this time, something shifted. Alina didn't react the same way. Her smile remained, but her eyes changed. Not anger, not fear, something stronger. Dignity. "I'll fix it again, sir." Her voice was calm, steady, unshaken. The man leaned forward. "Or maybe you're just not good enough for this place." Silence spread across the table and across the room. Even the man watching from the corner slowly lifted his head, because this moment was about to change everything. The silence didn't last long. One of the men broke it with a laugh, a loud, careless laugh. "Did you hear that?" he said to his friends. "She thinks she can fix it." The second man leaned back, crossing his arms. No, let her try again." His voice carried amusement, not kindness. The third man tapped the table impatiently. "But make it quick this time." Alina nodded slightly, still calm, still composed. She picked up the glass, turned away, and walked toward the kitchen. Behind her, more laughter. But something had changed in the air, subtle, yet noticeable. The customers nearby were no longer ignoring it. They were watching, listening, waiting. Inside the kitchen, the noise faded. The chaos of dishes and orders surrounded her. But for a moment, it felt quiet. Alina placed the glass down gently. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing stayed steady. A fellow waiter leaned closer. You okay? She gave a small nod. I'm fine. But her eyes said more than her words. She prepared the drink again. Perfectly measured. Exactly as ordered. No mistake. No flaw. As she worked, the restaurant manager glanced toward the dining area, his expression tense. He had seen customers like those men before. Big spenders. Big egos. The kind you don't confront. Alina picked up the tray, paused for a second, then walked back out. The moment she stepped into the dining area, all eyes subtly returned to her. She approached the table once more, placed the drink carefully in front of man. This is your drink, sir. The man didn't touch it immediately. Instead, he looked at her, long, judging. Then slowly, he picked it up, took a sip, a pause. The table went quiet. Then suddenly, he smiled. But it wasn't approval. It was worse. This one's closer, he said. The other two men chuckled. Closer? One repeated. What does that even mean? The first man leaned forward slightly. It means she's learning. More laughter. Alina stood there, still, silent. She wasn't confused. She understood exactly what they were doing. They weren't testing the drink. They were testing her patience, her dignity, her limits, and they expected her to break. But she didn't. Would you like me to adjust it further, sir? Her voice remained calm, even, unshaken. That caught them off guard. Just for a moment, the second man raised an eyebrow. Still polite. The third man smirked. Impressive. But the first man wasn't done. He placed the glass down slowly, then pushed it slightly toward the edge of the table. Tell me something, he said. Do you always work this hard for people who don't respect you? The question hung in the air, heavy, uncomfortable. Nearby diners shifted in their seats. This wasn't just rude anymore. It was deliberate humiliation. Alina looked at him, for the first time directly, and when she spoke, her voice carried something new. Sir, I work this hard because I respect myself. Silence. Real silence this time. The laughter stopped. The smirks faded just slightly. The man's expression tightened. He was expecting that answer. No one was. Across the room, the quiet observer leaned forward just a little. Interested. Very interested. Back at the table. The third man let out a short laugh. Well, that's new. The second man nodded slowly. She's got some spine. But the first man's ego had been touched, and he didn't like it. Not one bit. He leaned closer to the table. His voice dropped. Lower. Colder. Let's see how long that confidence lasts. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a thick wallet, placed it on the table, opened it. Stacks of cash. More than most people in the room would see in weeks. He looked at Alina, then at the money, then back at her. What if I told you? He paused. I could make your whole week in 1 minute. The meaning was clear. The room grew tense again. This wasn't about food anymore. This wasn't about service. This was power, control, and a test. Alina didn't look at the money, not even for a second. Her eyes stayed on him. Steady, unmoved. What would you like me to do, sir? Her tone was neutral, but the question, it shifted everything. The man smiled slowly. Now, he thought he had her, and from the corner of the room, the quiet observer finally put his glass down, because what was about to happen next would reveal far more than anyone expected. The man's fingers rested on the thick stack of cash. He tapped it lightly against the table. Slow, deliberate. Every small movement drew attention. Every second stretched the tension further. Alina stood still. Her expression didn't change. But the entire room was watching now. No one pretended anymore. The man leaned forward. Simple, he said. He slid a few bills out of the stack, placed them neatly on the table. Just do exactly what I say. The second man chuckled under his breath. The third leaned back, clearly enjoying the moment. This wasn't about money. It was about control. Alina glanced at the bills, then back at the man. Her face remained calm, but her silence spoke louder than any response. What? He said, smirking. Not interested? He added more cash to the pile. Don't worry. I can keep going. A quiet murmur spread across nearby tables. People were uncomfortable now. This had crossed a line. But still, no one stepped in. The man tilted his head slightly. You know, people like you should take opportunities when they come. The words were sharp, carefully chosen, designed to remind her where he thought she stood. Alina finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. I already have an opportunity, sir. The man raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? She nodded slightly. Yes, to do my job with dignity. Another silence, this time heavier. The second man shifted in his seat. Even he hadn't expected that answer. The third man let out a low whistle, bold. But the first man's expression hardened. He didn't like resistance, not from someone he believed was beneath him. Slowly, he pushed the money closer to the edge of the table, right in front of her. Everyone has a price, he said quietly. The words felt colder than before. Alina didn't move, didn't reach for the money, didn't step back either. She simply stood there, unshaken. Across the room, the quiet observer stood up. No rush, no sudden movement, just a simple decision. He adjusted his jacket slightly and began walking back at the table. The man's patience was wearing thin. You're wasting my time, he said. He suddenly grabbed the glass again, looked at it for a second, then let it slip from his hand. It shattered on the floor. The sharp sound echoed across the restaurant. Gasps filled the air. Liquid spread across the polished floor. Glass pieces scattered everywhere. The man leaned back calmly, as if nothing had happened. Well, he said, clean it. The command was clear, cold, public. Every eye in the room was on Alina. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Would she bend or stand? For a brief second, time seemed to stop. Then Alina moved. She stepped forward, kneeling carefully near the broken glass, not out of submission, but responsibility. She began picking up the larger pieces. Slowly, carefully, her movements were controlled, precise. No anger, no panic, just quiet strength. The third man laughed softly. Look at that. The second man added, back where she belongs. But the first man didn't laugh this time. He watched her closely. Something about her composure unsettled him. It wasn't what he expected. It wasn't what he wanted, because she wasn't breaking. She wasn't begging. She wasn't reacting at all. And that made him uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Just then, a voice cut through the tension. Calm, deep, authoritative. That's enough. The entire room froze. Alina paused mid-motion. The three men looked up instantly. The voice didn't shout. It didn't need to, because it carried something far more powerful than volume. Presence. The quiet observer had finally stepped forward, standing just behind them, close enough now that everything was about to change. The voice didn't echo. It didn't need to. It carried a weight that silenced everything instantly. Alina slowly lifted her gaze, still kneeling beside the broken glass. The three men turned around, annoyed at first, but that expression didn't last long, because the man standing behind them wasn't just another customer. He stood calmly, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes steady. There was nothing flashy about him, no loud display of wealth, but there was something undeniable. Authority. The first man frowned slightly. Excuse me? The observer didn't react to the tone. He simply stepped closer, his gaze briefly shifting to the shattered glass. Then to Alina. Are you all right? The question was simple, but it changed everything. Alina nodded gently. Yes, sir. For the first time that night, someone had asked her that. The man gave a small nod, then turned his attention to the table. Now, his expression changed. Still calm, but firm. You've done enough. The words were directed at the three men. A quiet tension filled the air again. The second man scoffed. Who do you think you are? A dangerous question. The room held its breath. The observer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out a chair, sat down slowly, right at their table. Uninvited, unbothered. I'm someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect, he said calmly. The third man laughed. Oh, really? The first man leaned forward, clearly irritated now. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. You're interrupting something that doesn't concern you. The observer met his gaze, unflinching. It concerns me more than you think. Another pause. The tension tightened like a wire ready to snap. Across the restaurant, the manager had stepped out, watching closely, but he wasn't moving forward. Not yet, because he recognized the man at the table, and he knew something big was about to happen. Back at the table, the first man smirked slightly, trying to regain control. "All right," he said, "let's make this simple." He gestured toward Alina, still near the floor. "She's staff. She made mistakes. We're customers." He leaned back. "We're just giving feedback." A weak justification, and everyone knew it. The observer's eyes shifted toward Alina again, still calm, still composed. Then he looked back at the men. "No," he said quietly, "that's not what you're doing." His tone didn't rise, but it grew heavier. "You're testing how far you can go without consequences." Silence. The words hit differently, because they were true. The second man leaned forward now. And what exactly are you going to do about it? There it was, the challenge, the moment they thought they still had control. The observer didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a simple card, and placed it on the table. Face up. At first, the three men barely glanced at it. Then, the first man's eyes shifted downward. He froze. His expression changed instantly. Confusion, then recognition, then something else. Something close to disbelief. The second man noticed. "What?" The first man didn't answer. He just stared at the card. The third man leaned in slightly. Then he saw it too. And suddenly, the confidence at the table disappeared. Completely. Because the name on that card was not just important. It was powerful. Extremely powerful. The observer finally spoke again. "I own this place." The words landed like thunder. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. A wave of shock moved through the room. The manager immediately straightened. Staff exchanged quick glances. And at the center table, everything changed. The first man swallowed hard. His earlier arrogance gone. "You're the owner?" The observer nodded slightly. "Among other things." A subtle addition, but it carried meaning. A lot of meaning. The second man leaned back slowly, processing. The third man looked at the broken glass, then at Alina, then back at the owner. The situation had flipped. Completely. Moments ago, they held the power. Now, they didn't. Not even close. The owner leaned slightly forward, his voice calm, controlled. "Now," he said, "let's talk about respect." And just like that, the real consequences were about to begin. The word respect lingered in the air. Heavy, unavoidable. No one spoke. Not the three men. Not the nearby customers. Even the clinking of cutlery had stopped. The owner sat calmly at the table, his presence now undeniable. The first man cleared his throat, trying to recover. "I think this is being misunderstood," he said. But his voice lacked the confidence it had before. The owner didn't interrupt. He simply watched. The second man leaned forward quickly. "Yes, exactly. We were just joking around." The third man nodded. "Just having some fun. Nothing serious." The words felt weak, empty, because everyone in the room had seen the truth. The owner's expression didn't change. "Fun," he repeated quietly. He glanced at the broken glass on the floor, then at Alina, still kneeling, still composed. "Is that what you call this?" No one answered, because there was no answer. The owner leaned back slightly. "For a moment," he continued, "I watched how far you were willing to go." His tone remained calm, but every word carried weight. How comfortable you were, humiliating someone who couldn't fight back. The first man looked down, avoiding eye contact now. The second man shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The third man stayed silent. The owner's gaze hardened slightly. "That tells me everything I need to know." A long pause followed. Then he turned toward Alina. "You can stand," he said gently. For the first time since the glass shattered, she rose. Not rushed, not shaken. Steady. The owner looked at her carefully. "Did you make any mistake with their order?" Alina shook her head softly. No, sir. He nodded. I didn't think so. The words were simple, but powerful, because someone had finally acknowledged the truth. The owner turned back to the table. As for your bill, he paused. You won't be paying it. The three men looked up instantly, surprised, confused. Relief flickered across their faces. But it didn't last, because you're no longer welcome here. Silence. The relief vanished, replaced by shock. I want you to leave, the owner continued. Now. The first man blinked. You're kicking us out? The owner held his gaze. I'm removing individuals who don't understand basic human decency. No raised voice. No anger. Just truth. The second man tried again. Do you even know who we are? A common question. But this time, it didn't matter. The owner gave a slight nod. Yes. A pause. And that's exactly why this decision is easy. The words hit harder than anything before, because power had met greater power, and lost. The third man exhaled slowly. Defeated, one by one, they stood up. No more laughter, no more arrogance, just silence. They walked toward the exit, faster than they had entered, and as the door closed behind them, the atmosphere in the restaurant changed completely. Lighter, calmer, almost relieved. For a moment, no one moved. Then the owner stood up. He turned to the staff. Take care of the floor, he said calmly. Then he looked back at Alina. Walk with me. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. They moved away from the crowd, toward a quieter part of the restaurant. Thank you, sir, she said softly. The owner shook his head slightly. No, he replied. Thank you. She looked confused. For what? He smiled faintly. For reminding everyone in this room what dignity looks like. The word stayed with her. But then he added something unexpected. I've been watching this place for weeks, he said. Not as an owner, but as a customer. A pause, trying to understand who truly represents what this place stands for. Alina listened carefully. And tonight, he continued, you gave me my answer. Her eyes widened slightly. I don't just need staff, he said. I need people I can trust. Another pause. People who won't compromise their values, no matter the pressure. The meaning became clear, slowly, powerfully. I want you to step into a new role, he said. Training supervisor, starting tomorrow. Alina froze. She hadn't expected this. Not even close. Sir, Her voice caught for a moment. He nodded reassuringly. You've already proven you're ready. A deep breath escaped her. Not of exhaustion this time, but relief. Years of silent struggle. Long shifts. Endless patience. All leading to this moment. Thank you, she said quietly. The owner gave a small smile. Just keep being who you are. He turned to leave, but then paused for one final moment. And one more thing, he added. She looked up. No one in this place is beneath anyone else. A simple sentence, but one that would echo far beyond that night. As he walked away, the restaurant slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed. Glasses clinked again. But something had changed, not just for Alina, for everyone who witnessed it. Because sometimes the strongest power is quiet dignity. And sometimes the people you underestimate the most are the ones who change everything.